Welcome to the Company of Dads podcast, where we explore the sweet, silly, strange, and sublime aspects of being a lead dad in a world where men, who are the go-to parent, aren't always accepted at work, among their friends, or in the community for what they're doing. I'm your host, Paul Sullivan. Our podcast is just one of the many things we produce each week at the Company of Dads. We have various features, including the Lead Dad of the Week. We have our monthly meetups. We have a new resource library for all dads. The one-stop shop for all of this is our newsletter, The Dad. So sign up today at thecompanyofdads.com/The Dad. Today, our guest is George Grombacher, a man whose interests defy easy categorization. He's a financial advisor for sure, running financial consulting professionals and being named a top advisor in the U.S. He's an author. One of his books is called The Purpose Book. He's the host of LifeBlood, a podcast that airs every day and delves into health, wealth, relationships, work, and life. I was a guest on it years ago when I was the Wealth Matters columnist at the New York Times. He's launching another podcast now called Align Money, which will get him back to where he started with LifeBlood before it became so expansive. He's a man who lives with intentionality and helps others do the same. I reached back out to him when I got a message featuring a baby wearing avocados, which took me back to those highly scheduled days of newborndom. Turns out that's a 6-month-old. He also has 2 boys who are 4 and 7. And now I'm really happy to have George back with us today. Welcome, George, to the Company Dads podcast.
Well, hey, Paul. Thanks for having me.
You've been busy, man. How have you been? Give me the highlights. Give me the post-COVID highlights of George's life.
So we are in a post-COVID world. We can all agree on that we're moving past that. I am highly scheduled. Highly scheduled. You took the words right out of my mouth when talking about the baby. Yeah, but life is good, man. I am in a fortunate place where I get to pursue my interests. So I get to do work that I think matters, and I get to do it every day. And I get to cart kids around and clean avocado off babies' faces and kind of everything else. So
one of the
life
things
is good.
We realized, when our first daughter was young, second daughter, huge avocado lovers. We had Labradors. If you have a Labrador, they can do. They really love to help out. Clean up avocados. It's in their wheelhouse.
I will let my wife know that. She's not a dog fan, which is sad because I think everybody else would really like to have a dog around. So I will let her know about that avocado cleanup feature.
Everything. The little puffs that fall on the floor, a Labrador gets that. They're good. Highly scheduled. We talk a lot at the Company of Dads about how lead dads, working moms, families in general, how the more they can see what the other person is doing, the better things turn out. Simple thing that we advocate for is really opened and shared calendars, not anything super complicated, but as we know, people sometimes don't even do the simple stuff. What's your calendar look like? Do you color code it?
I do not color code it. I've got a lot of recurring meetings on there, but it's all the same color. My wife sends me color coded stuff. And I don't mean to sort of answer a different question than you asked me, but I couldn't agree more. My wife and I have recently started just a business meeting. We do it on Sunday mornings after the avocado covered baby goes down for her first nap, and we just get on the same page with calendars, sort of a previous business, new business kind of a meeting just to get on the same page because it's easy to start feeling resentful that I'm doing everything and what is she doing and vice versa. So it's really important.
One of the things we talk about at the Company Dads is again, highly complicated, but very simple thing called the paper test. And we tell couples, if you just sit down together Sunday afternoon when the baby's sleeping, that's a good time. Saturday afternoon, not in a moment of in extremis, not in a moment after you just had a fight, yelling and screaming about what you do, and write down separately on a piece of paper, what do you do? What do you do? And what do I do? And then you both do the same thing. And what we always guarantee is that what you think you do and what you think your partner does are going to be very different. And it's the moment to start having that, that conversation and having it and bringing some sort of understanding, as opposed to, as all of us, kids work, it's stressful. You start yelling at each other and it doesn't solve anything. Let's talk a little bit more about time. from that intro, from just, looking at all you've been doing, particularly since we last spoke, 4 or 5 years ago. You do a lot all the time. How do you manage all of that while still being a husband and a father and a non-dog owning human?
I really think I could easily fit a dog in. It's
You could.
probably hubris and wildly stupid, but um, I don't know what's first, but I do wake up very, very early in the morning. Right now, I wake up at 4:15 every day and I start my day. So I get in my exercise and stretching and all that stuff. And then I usually record an episode of the podcast at 6 a.m. Most days of the week, not that are not the weekends. So that's sort of the short answer to the question. But I also, at this point in my career, I've been a financial guy for 20 some years, started in 2001. So I have a decently firm handle on what needs to be done in order to get the results that I want there. And if I'm going to get everything done, I just don't, I know that I need to wake up a little earlier than maybe I would like. So I don't know how long I'm going to be able to do that, but been doing it for as long as the kids have been as long as the kids have been alive. So
What time do you go to bed at night?
I try to be in bed for at least 8 hours. So in bed by about 8:15, hopefully.
Wow. Walk me through, walk me through a day. Give me what, because I think you fit so much in, but look, we all have the same 24 hours in a day. You seem to be maximizing it. So walk me through that. You're up at 4:15, you're doing your exercises, you're stretching, you record a podcast at 6 a.m., your time, which is a little wonky because for people who don't know, you're in Phoenix, which doesn't believe in daylight savings. So sometimes you're 3 hours behind the East Coast, sometimes 2 hours, whatever. What's your day look like?
Yeah. So record the episode. It's edited and done by 6:45. So my shows are 20 minutes. So pretty short and sweet. Edited and done 6:45. I then leave my office and start preparing the children to get out the door, which my wife has already been working on some aspect of that. So we get the kids up out the door between 7:15 and 7:30, dropping them off wherever they need to go. And then we're both starting our respective days. My wife is a full-time professional. Um, and usually try to start my day at a coffee shop of some kind and write for at least 45 minutes if I'm able. So I love doing that. That's a habit I got back into. I liked writing a lot when I was a young person in school, and then just professional life beat that out of me, but I found it again. Probably when I'm 45 years old, about 6, 7 years ago. I read The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. She talked about the morning pages, which you're probably familiar with. So I'll do that. And then it's just the business of financial services and whatever else kind of needs to get done. It's client meetings or service work, stuff like that, new business development, and sprinkle in, try to get to the gym twice a week if I'm able to do that. And, food and just regular stuff from there.
What time do you end your workday?
About 2:30 is when I'm done.
Really?
Yep.
And what do you do from 2:30 to 8:15 when you go to bed?
I am in charge of picking up the kids because my wife has a traditional corporate job. So I
Yeah.
usually will pick up kids starting around 3, and then we go to different activities, as all parents are aware of. It's
Mhm.
soccer, or jujitsu, or gymnastics, or tennis, or whatever, and home and running a couple errands, making dinner, and then it's dishes and laundry and just the household kind of stuff. My wife gets home usually between 5:45 and 6:15 and try to spend some quality time together as a
Yeah.
family between that time, and then it's get kids ready for bed and get myself ready for bed.
You're a lead dad, man. You are the definition of a lead dad. We define it as the go-to parent, whether he works full-time, part-time, or devotes all of his time to his family, and in many cases is supporting his spouse or partner in their careers. This is awesome. Do you have at work at financial consulting professional, do you have leverage? Do you have people who are helping you out on the client stuff, or how does that work?
Yeah, yeah, I've got a team of people. So I run a financial firm. We do 401(k) plans for companies. And then I run a financial wellness company, which is very, very similar, but a different company. Um, essentially just trying to help people get better at money.
Yep.
That's the mission of both the groups. And so I have support from a professional standpoint, certainly.
Yep. And, for many of us, delegating is difficult. You want to do it, and it really takes a great manager, an involved person to say, okay, you're going to do it your way. It's different than how I would do it, but it's going to be fine. Is that a skill that you knew that you had innately, or is that a learned skill that you learned how to delegate so you could really, maximize your days and your life?
I don't know if I've ever sat down and thought which of my many, many skills are innate. Uh, some probably are, but I am very much a proponent of, if I want to get good at something, I need to learn how to do it. And so I'm a big fan of learning best practices or just whatever it is. If I want to start playing pickleball or whatever, I need to learn how to do it. And then I know that I'm going to get a lot better over time. So very much and delegation, that's a really, 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 really hard thing, especially as a person who is a doer. I'm fond of saying that my spirit animal is a beaver because you could throw a beaver on Broadway or in Times Square, it's going to start building dams. And, I just do, you know. There's a lot of talk about being a human being, and maybe one day I'll get there. For the time being, I'm a human doing. So the answer to your question is no, these are all very learned.
Your first career, your first business, though, was working in financial services. Is that correct?
Yep.
All right. So, like most of us, when we have varied interest and we're fortunate enough to be able to pursue our interests either professionally or personally, they sort of accrete, and it's one and more and two and three and four and five, and so you didn't start out this busy. You started out trying to break into financial services, start a firm and advise people on 401ks, and everything else comes from there. Then you get married, then you throw in some kids. Probably, why you don't have the dog, but I know that's going to come after this podcast. Um, and but when you look back at how it's an abundant life, but it's a life that surely requires a lot of tending to be more antiseptic, a lot of management. How has that, how have you been able to do that while still being, we all need to make money, but if you're not a good husband and you're not a good father, that's the root to unhappiness. How have you, managed to add and integrate at the same time?
I've certainly come to appreciate that we all go through different seasons of life. When I was, 12 years old, I wanted to be the best tennis player that I possibly could be. And so that's what I focused all of my energy and attention on. When I graduated from college, I really had no idea what I wanted to do, but I wanted to be successful. I wanted to be respected. And frankly, I wanted to meet women. And so I found a career in financial services that allowed me to dress respectively, make a lot of money, and gave me free time to be able to be very, very social. And I did that until I was about 28 years old. And then I made a bit of a career pivot into a management role as opposed to being a producer. Did that for 6 years, met my now wife during that time. And the next stage of my life moved from chasing women to having a deeper understanding of what I wanted to do professionally. So I pursued that for a number of years, and then my wife and I started our family. And now at this point, that was 7 years ago, which is surprising to say that out loud. But my priorities have totally shifted. And, turning 40 and now 45 years old, it just hastens you. You have a deeper appreciation. I have always intellectually understood that, I don't have a lot of time, and none of us do, and that I don't have time to waste. But when these things start happening, and along the line as well, 2020, when COVID was just starting, my brother passed away, who was 3 years older than I am. So you sort of realize through the birth and the death of loved ones that you're very mortal. And
Yeah.
I still, I, I don't know if I'm more driven than other people. I assume that I am. I just know that I'm a driven person and I've got a lot of things I want to do. And it's just made me more ruthless with how I decide to allocate my most valuable resources. and how I want to be spending my time. And that's a silver lining from COVID for sure, is that, you're not traveling around or driving around whatever city you're in to have coffee with people every morning. Just stopped doing that because I couldn't do it anymore. So I have a deeper appreciation for just how to allocate my time, my attention, my energy.
Listen to that. I'm rethinking my recommendation on the dog. I don't think you should get a Labrador. I think you should get a Border Collie because
Okay.
a Border Collie will, like, your kids won't get away. Like if your kids are out in the backyard, the Border Collie will herd your children like they're sheep. And a Labrador will not. A Labrador will eat all their food and sit down. So I just think time management. Um, what's the purpose book about?
The purpose book it's designed to, as I dug into what makes for a good life. How do I live an examined life? How do I become the person that I really want to be? How do I live the life that I really want to have, that I really want to live? So it's not lost on me that that's a pretty audacious title of a book to write, the purpose book. But it is what it is. So it's I do not like when people say just do it or fake it till you make it. These nice platitudes that say, just go ahead and make that happen. Well, if somebody doesn't know how to do it, then they can't
Right,
just do it.
right.
So I wanted to help people. And LifeBlood, my podcast, is really kind of a how-to show. It's how to do whatever it is that you're interested in doing. And the whole idea is how can I incrementally get a little bit better so I get closer to the life that I want. So my premises or thesis is that, purpose is it's really why we do what we do. Goals are what we want. Our beliefs are who we are, and then our habits are how we do all of it. And how do I align all those up as close as I possibly can? And if I'm able to do that, I think I've really positioned myself to get the life that I want. Obviously, I don't have control over much of it, but I do have control over those things and being thoughtful and contemplative about those kinds of things.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say you're not a guy who makes a lot of excuses. Is that
I
fair?
There's certainly reasons for why things don't happen, but I sure try not to make too many excuses.
What do you think holds people back? Particularly we're talking about dads here. I'm sure it applies to moms and dads, but what do you think holds back, dads from having that purposeful life, from doing what they really wish they could do or hope they could do or set out to do?
Yeah, there's a lot of terrible quotes about majority of men live lives of quiet desperation, and I think that we're pulled along by assumptions and expectations, and I'm living on somebody else's terms, and I've got a honey-do list that's a mile long, and I've got to do this, or my family's going to be mad at me or my wife or my parents or my in-laws or this, that, and the other thing. And I totally get it. And then, a lot of us are sort of in the red and we're behind the eight ball when it comes to our finances. And that really limits our ability to follow our bliss or whatever silly term you're interested in using. So it's all that stuff. And if we're not in the habit of, if we don't have habits of living the way that we want, well, then we're not going to be doing it. Then we're just sort of, the tail on the Labrador slash Border Collie is wagging the animal versus the animal wagging the tail. So you refer to me as an intentional person, and perhaps that is a lack of intention is one of the main things that stops people from doing what they want.
You know, we all know that it's a lot easier to stay in shape than it is to lose weight and get back into shape. Um, if people are focused and intentional and they drive their life, they're making choices. But if people stray from that path and they lose that intentionality, they lose that focus, but they're craving the purpose, what are two or three things that you would advise them to start with to get back to that purpose-driven life that they want?
And all this sounds easy and does hard. So all this does, and again, I don't want to give platitudes out, but the only way to live how you want is to know how you want to live. So I've known the importance of goal setting since I was probably a 10-year-old boy. It took me until I was 35 to do it, though. So in a very human move, I had this knowledge in my head, but didn't do it for 25 years. So now I've been setting goals for 10 years. So I understand. Everybody was right. The verdict is in. You should think and write about, or you should know what it is that you want, and then make plans for bringing that desired future into your current reality. And then you work to execute on that. So yeah, in object in motion, it's easier to keep in motion, object in rest kind of a thing. And yep, it's really hard to drop 30 pounds. It's a lot easier to drop 5 pounds when you kind of nip it in the bud a little bit. So first and foremost, you got to know what you want. And goal setting, it's a bad term because nobody does it. So clearly there's the big goals out there. Whoever's responsible for pushing goals needs to sort of do a refresh on the branding. But just think about what it is you want. How would you like to be spending your days? A weekday, what would a perfect day look like? And I'm not saying it's possible, but maybe we can get a little closer to it. How would you like to start your day? What time? What would you like to do? How would you like to end your day? Maybe focus on the beginning and then the end. Get super clear on that. And then we have to remind ourselves. So I have to remind myself of what it is that animates this behavior. What is it that's driving me to wake up at 4 o'clock in the freaking morning? Because I don't want to. Never do I like when my alarm goes off at 4. I'm like, oh, great. No, it's super painful. I dislike it immensely, but I just remind myself. So around my neck, I think this is a super practical thing. I'm going to screw up my whole microphone here. I've got a skull, and this is a memento mori, which is a reminder that we're all going to die.
Yeah.
So it's a reminder of that. I've got a cross, which is emblematic of Christ, but also of my brother. And it reminds me that I owe. There are a lot of people who have come before me that are no longer here, that have paved the way for the life that I have, or my ability to pursue it. And that directly, that my brother died when he was my age, essentially. And it drives me to get up and to do my work and to do uncomfortable things every day, because I want to honor the memory of those people who came before me, or people who just can't do what I have the ability to do. And then finally, there's a key on there, which is emblematic of my work and how important my work is to me and the impact I'm interested in having. And I wear these, it's kind of like we have a wedding ring. It's a reminder.
Yeah.
I put it on, I touch it, I feel it, and I remind myself, because it's easy for me to forget, right? In fact, I do it all the time. So I have to remind myself. And those things do the trick for me. And I think potentially it could help somebody else too.
George Grombacher, thank you so much for being my guest today on the Company of Dads podcast. One final light question. What's your favorite thing to do with your kids?
Go to the zoo. Love going to the zoo with them. So,
Wow. Favorite animal?
there are spider monkey enclosure where you sort of get in, and there's 2 doors so the monkeys can't escape, but they're these little mythical, wonderful little creatures. And you can see them crawling around all over the place. So that's one of our favorite things to do for sure.
Great place to end. Thank you again, George. I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you again and having you as my guest on the Company of Dads podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Company of Dads podcast. I also want to thank the people who make this podcast and everything else that we do with the Company of Dads possible. Helder Mira, who is our audio producer. Lindsay Decker, who handles all of our social media. Terry Brennan, who's helping us with the newsletter and audience acquisition. Emily Servin, who is our web maestro. And of course, Evan Roosevelt, who is working side by side with me in many of the things that we do here at the Company of Dads. It's a great team, and we're just trying to bring you the best in fatherhood. Remember, the one-stop shop for everything is our newsletter, The Dad. Sign up at thecompanyofdads.com/thedad. Thank you again for listening.